but we will go. So Charla is not here and Cindy's not here. Do we have to move to excuse both of them? One at a time?
Yes, please.
All right. So do we have a motion to excuse Charla, who called in, I believe?
I
Right?
make a motion to excuse Charlotte.
Do I have a second? Okay. And Cindy, do we wait a little while for her or do we just go ahead and do her?
Deputy Mayor Hayden, I'm sorry, who was the second on Councilmember Newman?
Josh.
Hamilton.
Thank you, sir. So Deputy Mayor, we do need to take a vote on that one and then we can wait just a few seconds and hopefully Councilmember Hochstetter shows up. I did talk to her earlier today and she didn't indicate that she would not be here. So I can reach out to her and see if she's having trouble connecting as well.
Okay. So I have a motion and a second to excuse Councilmember Newman. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All against? Seeing no one, Councilmember Newman is excused. Okay, so I will wait a minute for Jason to finish his call.
Andrea, can we just move on to the first topic and then we can make a motion later on to excuse Councilmember
Yes.
Hochstetter? We can't get a hold of her.
Yeah, considering
Okay.
she didn't call in advance, let's act on the assumption that she'll just be late. And
Okay,
if she doesn't show, we'll excuse her at the end.
all right, so let's just move on to regular business. Item number 1, Sumner Meadows Purchase, Sale, and Agreement.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor. This is my item tonight, and we will be presenting to you an extension to the purchase and sale agreement between the city and the buyer of the former golf course property. Before I start talking about the agreement itself, we thought it would be really helpful for council and staff, given the passage of time, to do a short presentation on where we're at currently with the project, what has occurred since we last were before you with this topic, and let you know some other status updates before I get into the details of the extension. So I'm going to turn it over to Mike, who will give a presentation on the project.
Good evening, council members. Let me cue this up here real quick. And can you see the cover sheet there? Like Andrea was saying, I'm going to go over a brief history of the golf course and the flood projects that we have going on. So a bit of history. On October 15th, 2012, after operating the golf course for 20 years, council passed a resolution to surplus and sell the golf course. We've been subsidizing the golf course for most of that 20 years. In January of 2013, 150 acres of developable property was listed by Colliers International. City accepted an offer of $57 million for Sumner Meadows, from Sumner Meadows LLC, referred to as principal. In 2014, the United States Army Corps of Engineers asserted potential jurisdiction over our man-made water features. We submitted a jurisdictional determination and then eventually withdrew that in 2015 before they made a ruling. And we spent quite a bit of time researching the man-made water features and to determine whether we felt they were jurisdictional or not. Sorry about that. And if there were jurisdictional waters of the United States. In 2017, we adopted new FEMA floodplain maps, and a portion of the golf course ended up being in the floodway, making it undevelopable. Kind of just to let you know the difference, a a lot of our industrial areas in the floodplain, but in the floodway is when you do have flooding, the water is actually moving through it and you can't develop it in that area. If it's in the floodplain, it fills full of water, but it really doesn't move through it. So that's kind of the distinction between floodway and floodplain. So in 2018, with the man-made water features and the new flood maps, we determined that we couldn't sell the whole 151 acres. So we revised the PSA and reduced it to 71 acres. And from there, we were able to figure out exactly where our flood project and enhancement project was going to be. Kind of helped get us started in 2015. We had some big floods before that. 2009 was one of the biggest ones. And then the state legislature allocated $824,000 to basically study the flooding in Sumner. The goal was to come up with a design for 30% design with a solution. And at that time, they were talking from the city limits to 16th Street. So just kind of the blue area to the top there. And we had to design for both flood risk and restore salmon habitat. So with that money, we started what we call the dialogue group. And the dialogue group was started with the city, both tribes, the Muckleshoots and the Puyallup tribes in Pierce County. And that's where we were trying to get a collaborative solution to our flooding and habitat in the area. One of the things that came back from the tribes and county was that it needs to be more of a regional solution. We didn't want to just focus in on Sumner and have a couple projects here and there that are going to reduce the flooding in Sumner, but really doesn't look at any other parts of that river. So what we did is we studied the river all the way from city limits all the way down to the confluence of the Puyallup. And we came up with a solution for that area, a series of different projects I'll go into in a minute. But kind of going back, the biggest problem we're having out there is the aggradation. All the materials are coming down from the mountains, down the river, and they hit the valley, and the water slows down, and a lot of that settles out. Kind of give you an example, in 1984, we were able to convey 16,000 cubic feet per second of water. In 2015, we started flooding at 5,500 cubic feet of water. So that shows you how much little capacity that river had. At that time, we put in some HESCOs where it was going over. And so right now we can safely convey about 9,000 cubic feet per second of water. So our regional approach turned out to be basically 4 projects. On the north, we have the Stewart Road Bridge project. And then just below the bridge, we have our left bank setback levee. And then the green around the point there is our point bar setback levee. And then the big one here that includes the golf course and the land south of the golf course is our habitat project. That's pretty much the one we're going to talk about tonight. The habitat project restores about 170 acres, and then we create side channels and wetlands, and that'll help store our flood water. It also provides a place for some of that sediment to deposit. So, and also other channels for the water to get through so that it doesn't flood our industrial area. And we're also adding wetlands and log jams to create better habitat for the endangered salmon species. So here's a picture of what it looks like today. And here's a picture that we hope to construct this here, where you can see all the side channels, all the vegetation and what have you. And then the railroad siding tracks to the right of the picture there. And another of today, you can see the man-made water features in the golf course and what we hope it to look like with the side channel and turning the tail race to the south. One of the things that helped make this project real for us was the railroad approached us, and we're talking about doing 10 siding tracks right next to our habitat project. So they'll be purchasing city property. They'll be moving 1 million yards of excavated material. That's a huge benefit to the project. It would have cost us close to $30 million to remove all that material and take it off site and dispose of it. Not only are they going to remove the material, but they're also going to contour the area so for our habitat project. So they'll dig the dirt out, dig the channels, put the gravel in the channels, and then really what all we have to do is come back and vegetate the area. The other advantage we had with the railroad is we're putting in a joint application, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. They have a person at the Corps that works primarily on their projects. So hopefully that'll expedite our permit. Through all this, our dialogue group has really grown. We still have the tribes in Pierce County, but we've added BNSF, Cascade Water, and a lot of the conservation, like Pierce Conservation, Floodplains by Design, Forterra, American Rivers, City Pacific, and Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife. And this project really has a lot of diverse funding. Of course, some of it will be coming out of our budget. We have money from Floodplains by Design, round 3. We're receiving quite a bit of money from Pierce County Flood Control Zone District, the city water utility and sewer utility will be paying for the utility relocation so we can dig out that area. We also have funding for our Stewart Road Bridge. Port of Tacoma is putting money into it. BNSF will be doing quite a bit of the work for us. And then, of course, part of the sale from the golf course will go to help pay for the project. So again, there's kind of 2 reasons we're doing this project. One is to enhance critical habitat. There's quite a few endangered species, salmonoids in the river, and we're going to try to give them rearing grounds and places that they can get away from predators by our log jams and building ponds and wetlands. And also trying to deliver really cold water to the river system. And also to protect homes and environment from flooding. This is a picture of the flooding in 2009 where Mankey's parking lot was underwater. And it's real important to protect our industrial area because it's a supply chain that really delivers goods to the whole region. The materials come in on the port, they're shipped to Sumner, they're loaded on trucks, and then going out through the whole region. We have Costco, Amazon, McDonald buns are made in that area, Delano's Coffee, Huey Hansen. So there's a lot of industry out there that needs to transport their goods and can't do that if all our roads are underwater, they can't get to their buildings. Right now, we have about 17,000 jobs located in our industrial area. And here it says we have 1.14 billion asset value. That was determined a few years ago, so I think it's quite a bit more than that now. So our current status, we have submitted for the core permit. We did that earlier this year. A couple things changed, so we resubmitted that. Instead of putting the tail race in the culvert, we're going to put bridges across that. Right now for that project, we're about 75% design. We're moving towards 90%, hopefully having the complete design in 2022. And if all goes well, construction for the Habitat project hopefully will be starting in the fall of 22, fall of next year. Part of our permitting is our SEPA. And so we put our SEPA out for comment and review. And that was put out on September 30th. We're getting a few comments, but most of them are pretty positive. And then we're also working really hard to complete utility relocation design. Again, with this project, we're relocating our water and our sewer and a pump station. We're also relocating the PSE power that goes across in that area. And that construction is planned for spring of next year. So that's kind of the status of the project. And I'll let Andrea take over from there.
Thank you,
Andrea?
Mike.
Andrea, I'm sorry, before you start, just for the record, Councilmember Hochstetter arrived at 6:08.
Excellent. Thank you. So I wanted all of that history, and we wanted to present that to you to help put into context how we are to the point we're at today. In 2014, Principal entered into a purchase and sale agreement with the city. A lot has changed since then. You just saw that the Army Corps of Engineers threatened to take jurisdiction over the water features. Half of the property that was for sale was no longer developable due to adoption of updated Fema maps. The city's river project grew out of this dilemma and has become one of the most exciting projects in the region. And so we have had to go back to the drawing board with the purchaser on the golf course property a multitude of times, either to revise the acreage or to revise and renegotiate the purchase price. And from 2014 to now, they have been nothing but flexible. They have been willing to amend the agreement to accommodate the city's project. They have been willing to amend the agreement to accommodate the city's timeline. And they have agreed to purchase effectively half of the property for almost the same purchase price because we renegotiated the price in 2018. So before you tonight is an extension, one last extension of the purchase and sale agreement term. It is for a term of 3 years. That is not an arbitrary figure. It is well thought out because it is intended to get us through to core permit and the ability to close on the property and sell it to the buyer. It is also intended to avoid having us come back time and time again due to unanticipated delays or revisions that might be necessary due to the project. So before you tonight is the extension on the term. There are a couple of other terms I wanted to highlight that are in this amendment. The most important of which is the buyer has agreed to close on the whole property. So all approximately 72 acres of property at a purchase price of about $40,500,000 when they can access at least half of it. So that means that the property is very important for the city's core permit. It needs to be utilized. It is likely to be a condition that the city use it as a laydown staging area and for other reasons associated with the river project. But when at least half of that property is no longer necessary to meet a condition of the core permit, the buyer is willing to come on and purchase all of the property. That means that we have the entirety of the purchase price available to help fund the project or for use anywhere else that council would like to allocate it, even when the buyer can't get on to the whole thing. And so the remaining use of the other half would be pursuant to some use or easement agreement. And the buyer has agreed to that. So I wanted to highlight that because that's the degree of flexibility we're working with here. There is an awful lot of willingness to work with the city and accommodate what we need. Again, I just wanted to reiterate that these delays are not the fault of the purchaser. We found ourselves in this predicament because of changed federal rules and changed mapping. The environment has transitioned quite a bit since this time. So before you tonight is a 3-year extension to the purchase and sale agreement that staff is recommending. I also want to highlight that Don Marcy with Karen Cross and Hempelman is on the call tonight. He is the city's outside counsel. He's been intimately involved in this transaction from the start and is here as an asset tonight to help answer any questions that any of you may have.
Thank you, Andrea. So I will take comments or questions from the council at this time. Patrick?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Andrea, I just wanted to make a comment and a question. The comment is I have no objection to the extension on this. I don't think it was totally unanticipated, or at least we knew that there was a good chance that it was going to be necessary when we did the updated PSA back in 2018. So I don't have a problem with that. And the purchase or the principal has been great and patient during the negotiation process with things that are outside all of our control. So I definitely appreciate that as well. I do have a question on the financial side of that, because some of those funds had already been earmarked or allocated toward like the operations center. Would it possibly become necessary that we'll have to bond those prior to the final of the sale, since those are likely to take place or could take place beforehand?
I can take that one. So yes, we are going to likely have to bond the full amount of the operations center. And that wasn't completely unanticipated either. I know Cassandra's been working hard with our outside bond counsel to make sure that we negotiate terms that allow us an early payment using sale proceeds if council deems that appropriate, in line with the resolution that you passed earlier this year.
Okay, thank you. And that's kind of what I anticipated, because I figured the operations center is going to move along much quicker than this. So the funds will have to come from somewhere, but that answers my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Anybody else? For me, I like the certainty of the whole thing. You know, we'll have money we can put towards grant funding, or we can put towards the project. And the buyer has certainly been easy to work with and really good. So I'm in favor of going with this contract too. Anybody else? Cindy, go ahead.
This one's for Mr. Dahlem. Where were you able to move the utilities from that area? Or where are you planning to move the different water and electric utilities we have?
Well, basically the utilities are buried 6 feet deep right now in that area. We'll be excavating down to them. We're moving the pump station to the east side of the railroad track, so outside of the project area. And then we'll directional drill the sewer line and the water line 30 feet underneath, so it won't get scoured out by the river if it comes over that way.
Is that something we can do ourselves, or something we have to hire to have done?
Oh, that's we'll have to go out for a contract to get that done.
All right, thank you.
And just one thing to add to that, Councilmember Hochstetter, there are also PSE utilities that run through this location via easement, big transmission lines, the big tall transmission lines. And as part of this project, those will have to be relocated as well at the city's cost.
Okay.
Just one other thing, Kathy, and that is, Andrea, did you say that the company that was buying it was going to need easements also? Or that last line of something you said?
Yeah, I'm sorry if that was confusing. What I said was that because they are willing to close on the whole property, even when they can only access half of it, the city would be then remaining on the other half via easement or some other license or permission access rights. So the easement would be actually granted to the city because we would no longer own the property if they close on all of it.
So they're allowing us to have an easement for what we need.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? So,
Yes.
Okay,
How
well,
long do you think this will take? You know, if in an ideal world, are we looking at 3 to 5 years
Yeah,
or
it'll,
longer?
it's about 3 to 5 years, depending on if we can get started next year. But it'll take a couple years to get the planning established, and
Mhm.
all the log jams built. We will have fish windows, so we can only work at a short time during the fish windows in the river. So we have to work around there. We're thinking it's about a 3-year construction. to get this all
Okay.
done.
Well, it's nice that it's at least becoming more realistic instead of kind of a plan. So good. Thank you.
great. Kurt, you have anything? No? All right. I think you got your answer, I think. It looks like everybody's for it, and I trust that the city has or the staff has the city in mind and will do the best for us. Mr. Marcy, do you have anything you would like to say?
No, I don't have anything additional. I think Andrea covered it all very well. I mean, this extension is necessitated in part because, you know, the railroad's plans have been somewhat slow to develop. And so we were a little later in getting our application into the Corps of Engineers than what was originally anticipated. And fortunately, the buyer has been fairly confident, has been compliant and has not created any problems. So I think this extension is warranted, and it's a well thought out one.
Thank you. All right. So with that being said, I guess we can move on to number 2, non-represented employees. Is that you, Jason?
Yeah, I'll introduce that. And just to close up the extension on the purchase and sale agreement, that'll be on next week's regular council meeting agenda for consideration.
Okay.
I'm
Great.
going to say goodbye to you, council members. Thank you very much. Good to see you all, and look forward to seeing you again in the future.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Don.
Bye-bye.
I will only provide a short introduction here because I know a lot of things I would say are going to be covered in Mr. Steffen's first few slides in his presentation. But I did just want to say that the mayor had hoped to be here tonight. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to be here to introduce this himself. But this is something that he has been instrumental in working on, and is fully on board and supportive of this. So with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Steffens. And I should also say, Human Resources Manager Adrian McNeely is here as well, who we know put a lot of time and effort into this. So go ahead, Jeff, sorry.
Thank you. Let me go ahead and share my screen here. All right, with that, everyone should be seeing my presentation. As Jason had mentioned, this was a task that was really given to us by the mayor as something that he felt was extremely important and something that he wanted to kind of put on our work plan for 2021. And really the purpose of this is, as you all know, we have high standards for our employees. The mayor has high standards for our employees, the council has high standards for our employees, and the citizens have high standards for our employees. And we're committed to providing a fair and competitive compensation package that will attract, motivate, reward, and retain those highly qualified employees. And we believe it's in the best interest of the city to compensate our workforce fairly for the value of the work provided, of course, within our financial ability to do so. It goes without saying that providing a competitive compensation package allows us both to attract and to retain top talent, which overall saves taxpayers money in the long run. This salary study covers 53 non-represented employees, which is just over, I think, 46 or 47 different positions were looked at as part of the salary study. This is the first time, at least in the 20 years that I've worked here, that we have ever done this broad of a comprehensive analysis of our salaries. The last one that was done was in 2017, And I believe that only included 7 different positions. So kind of the scope and magnitude of this is really unheard of. We do look at our represented employees. So this would be our unionized employees, every 3 to 4 years as part of our ongoing labor negotiations, but don't often really review the non-represented employees in this fashion. So we originally started this project back in spring. Adrian and I presented to the Finance Committee kind of our overall philosophy. And really, this was done to be objective, non-discriminatory, and ensure equal pay. It was really data-driven, where we analyzed not the person, but the position. We evaluated job descriptions and evaluated our job descriptions against similar job descriptions in comparable cities. Like I said, as we reviewed with the mayor and finance committee, we came up with our list of comparable cities. They're listed below of Auburn, Bonnie Lake, Federal Way, Fife, Gig Harbor, Kent, Lakewood, Puyallup, and Tukwila. We chose these cities because we feel that this is who Sumner competes with in the local labor market. Employees aren't going to leave here because they want to go work for another city that also has 10,000 people. They're going to work for a city that's going to pay them a fair wage close to their home. So this is who we're competing against. And really, in looking at this, we know that not all cities are created equal. There's all different metrics to come up with comparable cities, and this is kind of what we came up with. We also felt that we needed this large number of comps because, like I said, Sumner is unique, and there isn't always a one-to-one match at every city. Some positions we were fortunate enough to have a match in 7, 8, or maybe even 9 of these cities. Other of our positions, we maybe only found a match at 3 or 4 of these specific cities. And really the goal was to align our city salaries to approximately 90% of the top 3 highest salaries in these comparable cities. And the next slide will kind of walk you through a mathematical example of how that works. We just took a hypothetical job, and the top 3 salaries were $10,200, $9,800, and $9,500 a month. The average of those 3 would be $9,833 a month. And then our recommended salary would be roughly 95% of that. So approximately $9,341. We did have a little bit of fluctuation in there, so we could group salaries together to have some salary bands and not 50 some different individual salaries. So that's what you'll see. Some of the key objectives of our salary survey, like I said, was to be originally to be competitive. We wanted internal equity, so jobs with similar qualifications and complexities of duties and impact are assigned to similar salary bands. We wanted to be consistent, where positions are based on similar job responsibilities, education and training requirements, knowledge, skills, and abilities. We wanted to be transparent. Like I said, this entire salary survey was data-driven and done by looking at data and raw numbers. And we also wanted to look at compression. Like I said, we review union salaries every 3 to 4 years, and we wanted to make sure that there wasn't any compression between our non-represented supervisors and their represented subordinates. An example of that would be comparing a sergeant's wage to that wage of a deputy police chief. So we'll start with kind of each of the classifications and work through this. So begin with our hourly and our labor employees. So we have 2 positions that fall in this category, our pollution prevention specialists and our animal care technicians. So these are part-time in the hourly. So what you're looking at on this graph is you will see this kind of as we go through. The yellow circle represents the current top step of the employee. The green triangle represents the average of the 3 highest salaries, and then the blue diamond is kind of our recommended top step. So where we're proposing to move this salary. So if we move into the actual spreadsheet, you can see here, pollution prevention specialist currently makes $33.37 an hour. The average top 3 is $36.96, and we're recommending a new salary of $36. If we move on to our next salary band, this is the labor band. So we have 1 position that fits into this. These are our custodians. As you can see, there's quite a big gap between the current top step and the average highest. So we're recommending in this position, roughly a $600 a month increase. This was one of the positions that we kind of had an idea going into this salary survey where we felt that we were lagging behind the labor market. And this is kind of what that looks like on an individual position basis. As we move on to our next group, these are professional employees. These are technicians, assistants, and specialists. These are non-supervisory level, primary providing department support. So it's going to be counter staff. Most positions are within their top steps, or their comps, excuse me, very close. We did have a few positions, the finance technician 1 and finance technician 2, that are actually above where they should be, and we're recommending that those positions are frozen until they catch up with comps. So as you look at this, you can see on the very far right, you can see the finance technician 2. You can see where the yellow dot of their current top step is above kind of where their projected should be, so that salary will be frozen. Another good example is if you look at the admin specialist in the shops, which is right in the middle of your screen, you can see that that blue diamond is the recommended top step is just above kind of the average highest. And the reason why is to then group that salary kind of with the other 2 here, as it's kind of an outlier. So here's what those salaries look like. You can see some of them have, various levels of increases. Some are roughly just $76 a month. As I said, this classification of professional employees, their salaries were probably, very close to where they should be, where our recommendation is. So next group we move into is our technical employees. So these are administrators, our analysts, our associates, inspectors, coordinators, specialists, and technicians. So these are our technical pay bands. Usually have additional education, experience, and training, but they're still non-supervisory level positions. In this group of employees, we found that we had some IT positions that were that didn't fit in this group, as well as the city clerk. And we're recommending that we move those to a different pay band altogether. So as we move through and you look at this technical group, there's enough classifications in this position that it went on to 2 charts. You can see on the far right, we have our info systems tech contract administrator positions. There's quite a big discrepancy between where they're currently being paid and where we're recommending that they should be paid. Same with our assistant planners, kind of a pretty big gap. As we look at the next chart, you also see a big discrepancy in the finance analyst position, which is second in from the right, as well as GIS specialist. So some pretty big gaps in here as well. So what that looks like, let's see. You can see most positions down here that were originally at the $7,800 level are moving to roughly $8,000 a month as our recommendation. You can see the finance specialist 2 was significantly lower. So that's getting a pretty big recommended pay bump there. So next we're going to move on to our operations managers and our professionally licensed. So this includes our managers, our superintendents, senior planner, communications director, building official. The professionally licensed group includes our engineers, project manager, and attorney level positions where professional license is typically required to qualify for the position. These are kind of our first level supervisory positions, and they manage the technical and administrative staff and processes. And in this group, we had several salaries that were lagging behind comparable positions. We have typically, or what we had before was we had our operations managers, and then our professionally licensed were slotted kind of a pay level above those. In looking at these groups, they kind of all mixed and blended together. So our recommendation is to combine these into one salary group. We've also made a recommendation of paying our engineers just above comparable positions, knowing that engineers are difficult to attract, difficult to retain, and that we're competing against private firms such as parametrics in the labor market. So once again, this is a rather large group, so it's going to be split into two graphs. As you can see, we had some large discrepancies here on the financial services manager, communications director, and the HR manager in where we are currently paying compared to where the market suggested we should be paying these positions. If you moving on to the second graph here, you can see on the left-hand side, our engineer positions where we're recommending that we pay them just above the comps. Like I said, that was kind of a calculated move on our part. Also our info systems manager, quite a large gap between the current top step and where the recommended salary for that position should be. Overall, our IT department was kind of the most vastly underpaid when looking at comps across the city. So here's what the proposed salaries are for those. You can see like the very bottom, quite a large jump from $9,054 a month to $10,350 for our info systems manager, but that's still, a little bit more than $500 below the top three highest per month. So the next group as we move up is the deputy directors. So these are all supervisory level positions with a high level of technical expertise. The deputy director, there's only a few positions that fit into this group. What we found in looking at the comps is that the deputy police chief is kind of an outlier in this group, and we've moved that position off kind of onto its own band. In looking at the graph, you can see that this includes the deputy city attorney, the city engineer, the chief financial officer, and the deputy police chief. There was a large disparity, like I said, between the current salary of the deputy police chief and where the comps put that salary, and then again, where we're recommending it moves to. It was something that we knew in looking at that position kind of going into this, that we felt we were probably behind the market on our deputy police chief. Also a large gap in our CFO salary. This is what we're looking like as far as pay increases. As you can see, deputy police chief, current pay is $12,074 a month. The average top three is $14,849, and our recommended top step for that position is now $14,300. And then the last group that we'll be discussing tonight are our directors and our executive level. So currently, all of our director level positions are below comparisons, in particular the police chief. That position is well below. The city administrator position is also well below comparable positions. And on the city administrator position, we only looked at salary. Oftentimes we found the other city administrator contracts had kind of hidden fringe benefits in it, like car allowances, toll reimbursements, all sorts of other things. So we kind of excluded all that. So our recommendation is to create a new band, once again, specifically for the police chief in this group. Currently, all of the directors are paid the same salary. And our recommendation is that we move the police chief kind of up to its own band, slightly higher than everyone else. So here's the current top step of all of our directors. Once again, where the comps put them, and the blue diamonds are our recommendations, as well as the city administrator. So here's how that plays out on a salary basis. So currently our directors are at $13,016 a month. Our recommendation is to move everyone to $14,900, with the exception of the police chief, which is an additional $400 a month at $15,300. And then also at this, we're also looking at, so our recommendation, I should say, is for these salary survey adjustments to become effective November 1st. And then we'd also be looking at a second compensation schedule amendment, which would be for our 2022 salaries. So historically, our non-represented employees have gotten 100% of CPI. This year, that figure would be an additional 5.5%. Our adopted budget is 4%, and our recommended increase is just 4%. So essentially, 1.5% below inflation. And this matches our currently settled union contracts. So the next steps are, we'll be bringing forth an ordinance on the 18th, the next council meeting, that would amend the 2021 compensation schedule, like I said, effective November 1st, which would include these salary changes, and then adopt the 22 compensation schedule, which would include that 4% cost of living increase for all of our non-represented positions effective 1/1/22. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. And we also have, I can actually turn it over to Cassandra, because I know that the number one question is, how much is this going to cost and can we afford it? So we are prepared. And Cassandra can present that.
Well, that was a lot of work. And when I saw Adrienne trying to hire people and just about pulling her hair out, kind of looks like Jeff did pull his hair out, but I think it was really necessary. Cassandra, do you have anything to add to that?
I do have a slide I can share. It looks like Councilmember Reed has his hand up, so I will defer.
I think I'm still looking at the, I can't see the people. Oh, there we go, Patrick. I can go ahead, Patrick.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I have two comments and a question. My first comment is I definitely feel that these adjustments have been earned, that they are necessary, and that they are needed to be competitive with not only filling the open positions, but in retaining the great staff that we already have. And I want to thank Andrea and the others for everybody that's been involved in this entire process. My question is for Cassandra. Fun with numbers. So when this was brought before Finance Committee, it was suggested that the cost of this increase would be absorbed through not only strong sales tax collection actuals, but strong projections moving forward.
That's absolutely right. So taking a look at our fiscal impacts, and this assumes an effective date of November the 1st. For 2021, we have a total impact of $53,470. Of that, $18,125 is absorbed by the general fund. And then in 2022, the net impact is about $387,000. A couple of notes, about 20% of the general fund impact is actually allocated out to the user funds through our indirect cost assessment. So what that really means is about 20% of that will end up being absorbed by the utility funds and our internal service funds. These numbers also include a general fund savings that was realized through elimination of the finance technician 2 position that was eliminated in summer of 2021. Taking a look at these numbers, we took a really long, hard look at our 5-year financial model. Historically, we've always been very, very conservative in how we were forecasting our sales tax. And our forecast model included a 2% lift over the prior years, the prior full year. So for instance, our 2020 looked at 2018, our 2021 looked at 2019. What we're seeing in our sales tax trends is far exceeding that 2% lift. And this is one case where I think we're perfectly comfortable being a little less conservative, but making sure that we're still being realistic. Into the financial model, if we increase our 2021 to 3% lift, which even now to date, we've already exceeded that. And then our 2022 to a 2.5% lift, we're still well within, I would say, a very conservative forecast model. And yet we're able to absorb these increases with no furthering out or no drawing nearer of when those revenue and expenditure lines cross. We're still looking at a cross in 2025. There's a lot of uncertainties between now and then, but we are seeing very strong sales tax numbers. And I think even with those small increases in our forecast, we're still well on the conservative side. And it puts us in a very strong position.
Thank you, Cassandra. Now, Deputy Mayor, if I can do my second comment here.
All right.
I love the information here. I'm ecstatic that our sales tax projections have been very strong, not only with the addition of new economic development, but that we also have some very strong economic development in the near future, or potentially in the near future. I just urge caution that some citizens may have some confusion when we're proposing this as being covered through our excess in sales tax and our strong projections, but there's a potential for council to be asked for a tax increase here in the next month with related to going into the bank capacity above and beyond the 1%. And I think there's a mixed message there that I definitely think we should talk about further when the tax discussion comes.
Any other comments for staff? Josh, go ahead.
So I'm trying to understand the salary band. Is that like a range of pay for somebody? So years of service come into play, merit. So everybody just doesn't go to that number, right? It's somewhere in a range.
Yeah, so the bands are really a grouping of positions. And then within an individual position, we have several salary steps. So it's typically, most positions have 5 steps. You would start typically at step 1, and then you would progress through years of service. Once you got to step 5, then you would stop and then only get cost of living from that point forward.
Okay.
Actually, Councilmember Hamilton, I think what you're also getting at is everybody going to be moved to the top step?
Yeah.
Not necessarily.
Yeah,
but
the numbers that you gave, like everybody just gets to go to that salary.
Those were the very top steps of each position. So if someone is currently not at the top step, they would not then go to the new top step. They'd stay at their same step and move across.
But if they're already at top step, they will move to
Right.
top step.
Yeah, for presentation purposes, it just makes it a little bit simpler to show only the top steps instead of 5 salaries of each position, or it gets a little complicated.
Okay.
It was pretty colorful though. Do we have any other questions for staff?
I
Cindy,
was
go
just wondering how many are at the top step, as far as the staff, are you about half, or are you at a lower number than that?
Adrian.
The majority of staff have been with the city for more than 5 years. So I'd say there's probably less than a dozen who aren't at top step. And that's from either a recent promotion, if they have been with the city for a long period of time, then if they got promoted to a new step or to a new position or pay band, then they would be at a lower step and then have to progress from there. But in reality, a very large portion of our staff is at top step.
Well, that's good. I mean, I think the whole purpose of this was to maintain the staff that we have instead of losing them because of salaries. So I appreciate all the work.
And I want to also just remind council that when we budget for labor, we always budget at top step, even if we know that we have employees that are at step 1, 2, 3, or 4. And we do that so we have a easy way to budget. We can see year over year trends. And it's also a very conservative way to budget to make sure that we are not exceeding our labor budget due to like sometimes separation payouts if somebody retires, et cetera. So just helps even everything out.
We also budget at full family for medical as well. So if we happen to have an employee that's single or just them and a spouse, then there's a savings in that as well. So it gives us a little bit of room there in our budget. Sandra appreciates.
Cindy, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess this one's for Jeff, and I'm wondering, how come we're in such a rush to do it at November, the 1st of November, and not just start everything in the next year in January?
Part of the reason for adopting this November 1st is recognizing that these salaries for all of our competitors were in place January 1st of this year. So in theory, all of these employees have been underpaid for the past 11 months. So by having it start November 1st, it's just kind of a little bit of a catch up.
Okay, and then, so it looks to me like it's $32,000 each month for that. It's going to be an increase overall for the city. What I'm doing is just looking at, the cost was $53,000 for the 2 months, November and December. And then when you jump into the new year, it'll go up another $5,000 and be $32,000 more a month.
Having Cassandra check her numbers.
Okay.
She says yes.
Okay. And so that, and then Cassandra has looked it over carefully and feels that we can absorb that kind of change this soon and that we're ready for this.
Yes.
Okay. She says yes.
As conservative as I tend to be, I'm comfortable with this move.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So council, are you ready to see this move forward? Are you good with this? Yes, yes, yes.
Yes.
Okay, we're good. Jason,
Thank
back to you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And so this will be on next week's regular business. And it will be after we hopefully vote on the Police Guild collective bargaining agreement. So those changes as well that Jeff spoke to you last week about will be included in that ordinance. With that, that's all of our regular business. Mayor, I do not have a city administrator report for tonight.
Okay. Does anybody have any committee concerns? Nothing like that? And anything on the agenda calendar that we should worry about, Jason?
No, we're good.
No? All right. Well, then I guess we will, if there's no executive session, which it doesn't look like there is, we will adjourn. Thanks, guys. I lived.